Denver's track record on homelessness is filled with good intentions and insufficient results. The city auditor recently found the Hancock administration's efforts lacked even a clear strategy. So when the city's brand new Department of Housing and Homelessness spoke publicly today, our Anusha Roy went to listen.
It's a tale of two press releases. April 18th, the auditor, simply put, said the city could do better. April 19th, the mayor's office said the city is making great progress while announcing a new housing and homelessness department. Today, the head of that department said she's feeling pretty good about the future.
Things that have already been announced this year that are coming out right now include shelter improvements, day shelter expansion, bridge housing.
Talks about this department started in 2017, well before the auditor's latest report, according to Britta Fisher. Today, she shared their journey to streamline the city's work by combining programs and services under one umbrella. But during that same conversation, there was an entire slide dedicated to what still needs to happen, like finalizing a name, a budget, a structure.
I feel like we've got a skeleton of a new department.
There was no need for an auditor's report to point out that this task is not easy.
I know that we are cautious about starting new programs, but we have a crisis on the streets.
Between 2016 and 2018, the city saw an increase in unsheltered homelessness.
A slight decrease on the slide in terms of the number of people coming into transitional housing.
We want to see the plan for pathways out of homelessness, and we want to see the new ideas. That's what we should be doing here. I'm not here to babysit the shelter bed capacity.
For now, these city council members were satisfied with a plan to come up with a plan.
I'm actually more encouraged than I've been in a long time.
So on the to-do list for the rest of the year, work on the 2020 budget. The auditor's office also said that it is planning to follow up to see how these changes are going to be working out, Kyle.
So I mean, we look all the way back to when Mayor Hickenlooper was in charge. Denver's road home was not exactly a striking success, and the auditor has been scrutinizing the Hancock administration pretty well, too.
Yeah, it's specifically when it comes to the homeless and the community there. This is the second time now under the current administration that it's been audited. But to put that in perspective, it is not completely unusual just because it's a big and very high-profile agency. So sometimes they are going to take a look at it more than once.
Sure. All right. Anusha, thank you. Our next question is about the high-profile drunk driving case in which prosecutors have charged Todd Krasinski with murder for a fatal crash in Lakewood. He had 6 prior DUI convictions, and a viewer named C. Kelly Bush wrote in to ask why Krasinski's previous drunk driving convictions weren't admissible at trial. So I talked this afternoon with our legal analyst, Scott Robinson. He says this goes to a real basic principle of law, that prosecutors have to prove each case on its own without relying on the jury knowing whether the defendant has prior convictions. Now, there are some exceptions, Scott told me, but they don't apply in a case like this where the defendant admits to driving drunk. The question the jury is currently considering tonight is whether the crash in Lakewood that killed Angela Wimmer was murder. The results of Denver's runoff election could change tomorrow. Now, Michael Hancock's still going to be mayor. It's the clerk and recorder's race that we're watching. The last time we allowed Marshall Zellinger to talk about the clerk and recorder on TV, he pulled out his 3rd grade recorder and he played us a tune. I've been promised a much more serious examination of the rule that could actually add votes to a candidate's total.
We got notice that the elections division hasn't counted your ballot yet.
Paul Lopez is still chasing votes, even though Denver's election was last week. And Lopez had 315 more votes than Peg Pearl to be Denver's next clerk and recorder. Don't worry, I'm not going to play my recorder for this story.
The good news is I can make sure that your vote's counted.
Turns out 959 ballots were turned in and not counted. Ballots from all over the city, all political parties, every age group. They didn't count because the voter's signature didn't match what's on record, or there was no signature, or it was a new voter who needed to show ID. But if those voters sign this form correcting the problem, their vote will still count, and it could change the outcome of the clerk and recorder's race.
My name is Claire, and I'm a volunteer with Peg Pearl's campaign for county clerk.
With a midnight deadline to get voters to cure their ballots, both campaigns are working the phones and showing up at voters' doors. You're personally not going to the doors?
No, I'm personally not. As a candidate, I felt it was a little intimidating and overbearing to be the one to go and talk to voters.
Neither Peg Pearl nor Paul Lopez know if the voter they're contacting actually voted for them. They only know that person's vote wasn't counted.
We don't ask who you voted for. All that matters to us is that you voted, and we want to make sure that that ballot counts.
And let's not forget the 20,000 Denver voters who chose to leave this race blank, making these uncounted ballots that much more important.
I have no hard feelings towards anybody who ended up leaving this race blank. By the next time it rolls around 4 years from now, maybe people feel that they're more informed and that they want to participate.
Of the 959 ballots, about 200 voters have fixed their issue so far, and their votes will count tomorrow. Denver elections will tally those votes and, Kyle, any military and overseas ballots that have come in, because there's an 8-day grace period for those votes. Those will be added to the total, and we'll know tomorrow who really won clerk and recorder, and if it's close enough for an automatic recount.
Sure. And somebody somewhere will go, whoa, 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 why are these numbers moving around? This happens in every race. We just typically don't see it because we're not watching it. It's decided.
Right. The county clerk sends a letter and says, hey, your vote didn't count. You can fix it this way. Some people maybe don't get the mail, don't check it, throw it out. When it's a race this close, the candidate's saying, hey, remember that letter you got? It might help me. Maybe it doesn't because maybe you voted for the other person, but go take care of it.
Yeah. 20,000 people sent in a ballot but couldn't be bothered to vote in that race. Wonder if they care now. All right. Thank you, Marshall. Denver's bright new idea, LED streetlights, feel like an unwanted searchlight for some. And you know, it's encouraging to see the city appears to be listening to concerns, or at least listening to next. Last week, a viewer named Sherry Moore showed us the Star of Bethlehem special that got installed outside her house. But then the city came by to fix it. That's good, because I understand that the shepherds and the wise men were on their way. So voila, Sherry says the workers put in a lower wattage bulb. They also pointed it down and away from her house, which you would hope would be the standard for streetlights. The city began installing the LED lights in March because they're more energy efficient and durable, but they are bright little suckers. So if you're having an issue, give the city a shout. Denver police are about to go silent for people who have scanners. They're moving to an encrypted radio signal. They are offering journalists a deal to stay connected with a catch. Our Nelson Garcia explains.
Every day they are out there.
I met with 6 and Inca. Do we have any other info?
Words that can be plucked out of thin air.
I got one gunshot fired.
Open radio transmissions from Denver police.
We need at least 2 ambulances to 15th and Market.
But starting as soon as tomorrow, these words are going silent. That could impact how the media tells you about emergencies.
The issue is really getting information out to the public.
Jeff Roberts is the executive director of the Freedom of Information Coalition. He says scanners are a useful tool for the media, and radio encryption takes that away.
So it's not only just listening to potential news situations, but it's also a way of seeing how public servants are doing their job.
There's 622 Inca, 2 officers shot.
Denver Police Chief Paul Pazin says he needs to protect information.
We cannot broadcast victim, witness, and juvenile information that can be listened to on about 20 different phone applications.
Denver Police is offering encrypted radios to the media to maintain access to radio traffic. But they must sign this agreement, which includes restrictions such as no recording or broadcasting transmissions.
We just witnessed an explosion, a very large explosion.
We easily could have just flipped the switch and said, figure it out. Follow us on Twitter. We are not saying that. We want to make sure that we maintain that transparency.
I got to say that at least in Denver, they've made an offer to have encrypted radios available to the news media. Some agencies aren't even doing that.
9 News has not decided to sign the agreement. Our director of content, Eric Valadez, says, quote, "We respect the important role law enforcement plays in keeping our community safe. We cannot accept an agreement that restricts access to public safety information or limits our ability to report in a transparent manner." Kyle, the plan is for this to start tomorrow. To be clear, other jurisdictions such as Jeffco Sheriff and Aurora Police have already gone encrypted and did not offer the media any options at all.
We've seen this in a lot of different places. We saw it up in Longmont as well, and it does tend to create this tension, at least between journalists and then also the hobbyists who like to listen in and keep track of what law enforcement's doing.
Yeah, and when you expect our news organization to sign an agreement saying we're not going to use this information in a certain way, I think that's where things get uncomfortable.
Yeah, you wouldn't see those agreements with anybody. All right, thank you, Nelson. Appreciate it. So note on this. I think I got my first handheld scanner when I got my first job in news. It was a small town radio station. I was all of like 15 or 16 years old, and I kept the little scanner in my truck in case I had to go to breaking news, which we did not have a lot of where I grew up. I learned how to use a scanner, and pretty much just as quickly learned not to report the unverified information that came over it, or the sensitive information. Scanner's a tool, it's not a license to do harm or to carelessly spread misinformation or personal information. It strikes me, though, that this is a time when both journalists and law enforcement are struggling to keep the public's trust. I get the arguments for and against encryption, but I do think that when you're looking to build trust, you do that with more transparency, not less.
I think we all have had those jobs where we just don't want to go to work, and that's not the case with this job.
Have you ever had a job you loved so much you got it tattooed on your body? Let's just say there are no 9s hiding under my clothes, but things get wild at the zoo. Wild and sweet.
Freddie actually was with a female flamingo for a long time before he paired up with Lance.
It's an intriguing love story. That's Nest.
Hey there, meteorologist Danielle Grant. Take a look at this beauty. I love this shot. Denver, we see you. You're looking pretty good. A day in the 70s, a dry day for a change of pace around here. Looking pretty good aside from the San Luis Valley. Tracking a few isolated rain showers out there, but fairly dry around the I-25 corridor. That's the way we stay the rest of tonight, but tomorrow things start to change up for us. This evening, extremely mild. Temperatures down to 52. Few clouds out there. 40s and 50s across the plains. 30s and 40s going up in the high country. Late tonight, we might find 1 or 2 isolated showers rolling off the foothills in Douglas and Elbert counties, but that's going to be about it. Tomorrow morning, a beautiful start, and then 3, 4 o'clock, here comes those thunderstorms. They fire off the foothills and then quickly race across the eastern plains, and that really is going to be the bullseye for seeing potentially some severe storms. Tomorrow's threat, it's looking like strong winds. That's going to be the biggest issue for us. 60 to 70 mile per hour wind speeds coming our way. Overall, partly sunny, a nice dry start to the day. It's hot at 85, and then the thunderstorms move in, and that should help cool us off by about 4 or 5 o'clock. So again, a toasty day off to the east, 60s, 70s up in the mountains. You'll notice the weekend arrives, and we have a slight little cool off for Father's Day, Kyle, but we're going to keep those thunderstorms in the forecast pretty much each and every day.
Ah, yeah, that sounds familiar. All right, Thank you, Danielle. Denver's gentrification is not just a trend, it is also a play. We told you about the man from the north side. He's shining a spotlight brighter than the city's LED streetlights on how the city is changing. And wanted to remind you the first performance of Bobby Lefebvre's play North Side is tomorrow at Centro Su Teatro. That one's sold out, but there are showings every weekend through the 30th. Hey, I am glad that you found us here on Channel 20 tonight. Last time we're doing this for a long time. We got booted off of Channel 9 again to make room for the Stanley Cup. It's Game 7 between the Blues and Bruins tonight. We're going to be back home on Channel 9 tomorrow night. You changing it right now. When you're into bikes of all forms, you find a way to ride them together.
It gets very obvious when they are building a nest together.
An obvious couple, but an unusual pair.
In this case, they not only decided to pair up between the species, but 2 boys like to be with each other, which is perfectly fine here at the zoo.
It's fine, and it's Nest. June is Pride Month, as America celebrates the long march toward equal rights for the LGBTQ community. Now, you're going to see all kinds of organizations marking Pride in their own way. Denver Zoo's like, hey, come check out these flamingos.
And they have been together since about 2014 and have a very close relationship.
Bird keepers say a Chilean flamingo named Lance Bass, awesome, the lighter colored one, and an American flamingo named Freddie Mercury, even better, the pink one, always want to be together. They've coupled up. Their same-sex coupling is even more interesting because they're mixed species. They're not the same type of flamingo. So the zookeepers give them a fake egg to care for during the mating season, but they can watch the real eggs, basically act as surrogate parents if there's a breeding pair of flamingos that aren't caring for their eggs. The bird keepers say the same-sex pairings tend to happen in birds that have large flocks like flamingos, lorikeets, and penguins because the birds just have more choices.
Absolutely. They do not care at all. They just want to be with with the flamingo they choose. And as someone who's biracial and a part of the LGBT community, I think more stories like this need to be out here. And these flamingos are just flamingos. They're just doing what they can to live their best lives. And I'm there to help and support them do that.
They're just flamingos. They're just living their best lives. And you know the next time you're out there, you're going to be looking for the dark-colored one with the light-colored one. Same here. Employees at the Denver Zoo, you can tell they're proud of their animals, they're proud of their jobs. But I mean, there's pride and then there's tattoo proud. Dozens of zoo employees have tattoos designed after the animals they love there. They shared their stories and showed off the ink.
So this is our sea lion barn, our seal and sea lion barn. So this is where we do most of our training with our animals. So we both have polar bear footprint tattoos from one of the bears that we both worked with. His name was Lee.
He has made such a big impact on me as a keeper and a person that I always want to remember him.
For me personally, having this tattoo is just a reminder of what a great keeper I became because I worked with this animal.
His name is Echo, and he's an auger buzzard. I've been working with Echo for, it'll be 10 years here in November. A lot of them are the different animals that I've worked with over the years. So I got a raccoon, I got a toucan way up there, and then Echo. I've always been a fan of tattoos, and I thought it was a great way to kind of memorialize his accomplishments and the relationship that I built with him through our training.
Dance. I made some funny faces throughout, but Merritt was there, and so we got through it.
She did great.
I like the expression of it. I like having it as a part of me, of who I am.
I think it's great to show other people the animals that you work with and just being able to show other people the passion that we have.
I don't know. It was just a fun, kind of cool way to, I don't know, remember him. You know, as I go on through my life, you know, I won't always be able to work with him, but I'll always have like the experiences that we've had, and I'll always have my tattoo of him.
That is pretty cool. Thinking like if I got the 9 here, like it could be tastefully tucked into the collar, but it could also be out. Some people love to ride. Their motorcycles, their bicycles, their motorcycles and bicycles at the same time. It's the most Colorado thing we've seen today, and it's next. The most Colorado thing we've seen today is a guy who decided not to choose between his rides, a motorcycle and a bicycle. I love this. Andrew Meyer spotted this guy in the Castleview High School parking lot in Castle Rock. That's right. I mean, listen, you got to ride something when you get there. Share the most Colorado thing you've seen with the hashtag HeyNext or email next@9news.com. Wendy Brummett-Manis writes in, thank you, Kyle, for attempting to be a voice of reason. Wendy, my favorite voice of reason today is a viewer named John, who wrote in as a scanner enthusiast about the idea of police encryption. He says, after 40 years in the hobby, I'm now viewing this with a wary eye. He said, you'll lose an important ally without balance here about protecting police communications. John writes, I'm not a staunch freedom of information supporter. I have dear friends who wish to have it all encrypted. He says, trying to navigate the rhetoric and land on a balance. Well said. See you next time.